It's time right then.
Christina, could you start recording one more time, please? Sorry.
Yes.
All right, we're
All
good.
right. It's 10 o'clock and let me see, what day is it? It's July 7th. And Gary, what's up first?
Start with roll call today. Chair Bernard,
Here.
Commissioner Humberston,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher,
Here.
Commissioner Savas,
Here.
and Commissioner Schrader is on her way but not yet here. We'll start with coronavirus update from Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of the Emergency Operations Center.
Good morning, everyone. So we'll start out with our data today. So here in Oregon, we have 10,395 positives. There are 215 deaths, 257,326 negatives. Clackamas County has 861 positives. That is up 110 since our last report, which was on Wednesday, July 1st. We have 25 deaths, which is up 1, 25,014 negatives. Multnomah County has 2,529 positives. That's up 290 since July 1st. 69 deaths, 56,298 negatives. Washington County has 1,620 positives, which is up 241, 20 deaths, and 35,574 negatives. We now have 119 that are hospitalized statewide, and those are COVID positives that are known. We do have here in the state, the cases are trending down a bit, but the infection rate is increasing. So we saw in this summary yesterday that our tests conducted is 5.3% were positive, which in general, we have been under 5% here in Oregon. So we are seeing a slight trend there. The phase 2 dashboard came out last week. So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit because we didn't get to talk about that on Thursday. So here in the region, we are now missing 2 of the 6. One of them is the percent of increase in new cases in the last 7 days, which is now, which should be less than 10%. And I'm sorry, that should be less than 5%, and the number is now 10%. The percent not traced to known sources is 39%, and that should be 30% or less. Here in Clackamas County, we're still missing 2 of the 4 as well, and ours tend to move around a little bit on the board. But one of them is the percent of cases not traced to a known source in the last 7 days, 39%, and it should be 30% or less. And we do have an uptrend in our hospitalizations over the last 14 days. Public Health is working on active outbreaks, which includes 11 long-term care facilities, 8 workplaces, 1 social gathering, and 8 workplace exposures that are not outbreaks yet. We also are continuing to work with violations, especially around masks in the workplace. And we're working with OHA on that, trying to understand the responsibilities. What is the state's responsibility, and what is the responsibility of public health and environmental health here in Clackamas County? Behavioral health, yesterday they had 2 Go Team events, and there is 3 today. And here in Human Services branch, we are working on our social support and workflow between public health and social services. So we're working out the workflow related to if someone can't pay their bills, those types of things, and they have to be in isolation, what does that look like, and how do we make the right connections there? Our food boxes were put together in a new location yesterday here on the Red Soils campus. And this week we're doing some fixed route and senior deliveries this week. Our business assistant grants closed on Friday, and we got more than 440 responses and applications for that. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
I don't see any questions. I'll tell you, the food box thing was much more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Having one person have to shove, well, when they deliver, shoving everything up the ramp and bringing it in, and it was challenging, I'll tell you. But it worked. All right, so Paul and Sonia.
Yeah, so Nancy, they're still updating that dashboard on the county indicators on Wednesdays, correct? Tomorrow.
So the data comes out on Wednesdays, but they actually don't update it publicly until Thursday.
Okay. So I'm assuming that, possibly our numbers will look better yet because our counts on the daily have been slowly going downward a little bit, even though they're higher than they were over a month ago. But my question is, when is our 42nd day anniversary? I mean, we had the first 21-day waiting period and then a second 21-day waiting period. When is that 21st day? Is it Friday or is it last Friday?
It's July 10th.
It's July 10th, so this Friday.
It is this Friday.
Okay. I want to just, so that's what I was thinking. My concern, again, is the coupling of the other counties. And for every 100 cases we seem to have, Washington County is about double that, and Multnomah County is about almost 3 times that. So if for those of you that are watching the daily counts and the tracking of that, it's all on the website, but they're outpacing us considerably.
Yes.
As is Marion County, but Marion County's been looking a little bit better lately, but Marion County's also outpacing us.
So I'm hoping that the governor's gonna call this or plan a call this week so we can talk and see what we can do, but we'll see. But we're still not meeting 2 of the 6 criteria, so it's gonna be tough. Sonia?
Well, yeah, I just want to just remind everyone, Jim, and especially you as a chair, is that the governor let considerable amount of counties in that didn't meet all 6, including Marion County.
Okay, Sonia?
So Nancy, I'm hearing a lot of confusion over the mask requirement. And I just want to, and I'm trying to read the guidance to try to figure it out myself, and I'm so confused. So maybe you can help me with this. For businesses, the order lists out, in public indoor spaces, including, and it lists all of these businesses. And then it has other more specified criteria that seems like it includes every business that could be open, that the public could go in. Is that true, or is it just limited to the businesses that she lists out in the first part of the order?
So in the first part of the order, and I don't know if Mr. Madcore wants to weigh in on this too, but how I read it, in the first part, it says including, but it doesn't mention all of them. And I'm reading it that is all indoor spaces where the public can go into.
Okay, so it could be a small, like, accountant business or a financial planning business, which has a few employees,
Yeah.
and the public could go in.
That is how I read it, but Mr. Madcore, do you have?
I concur with Nancy's interpretation. All
Okay.
businesses open to the public.
And then my next question is, and I think this is one for Clackamas County too, before when we talked about this, if an employee was at their desk and able to maintain 6 feet distance, they didn't have to wear the mask. Is that
Correct.
also true in any business or any place?
Yes.
Okay. And then Nancy, could you give us, a sort of a bigger picture view? I really appreciate when you go through the, we're dealing with 11 long-term care outbreaks and so many workplace. And I know one of the key areas of how we're tracking is the community spread, where we can't go back to a known source. And I know we have like 39% of that, but we're hearing from the national media and even our statewide media that, oh my gosh, there's more cases today than ever. This weekend had this many more cases. We're going higher, higher, higher. California's, bracing for their hospital system to deal with all the people who are going to die. We've got, things seem so catastrophic. Can you put Oregon in context with everything we're hearing out there, and how, I know this is, you might not be able to answer this, but I'm just wondering how that's all being taken into consideration with the decision-making and the recommendations that were being given.
It is, and there's some of the things I can answer, or there's some observations I can make that might help. I probably don't have the full answer that you're looking for, but I will say that Oregon, we're still under the 10% infection rate, right? Or the positive rate. So we're at 5.3. And when you look at other states where it's much more dire, or they're closing down, they're going backward, they have a 10% rate or more. So the good news is that Oregon is under that 10%. The bad news is, or concerning news, it's not bad news. The concerning news is that you're seeing our rate go up. And now it's 5.3%, which for quite a while, we were under that 5%. So I think that there is, it's like, where are we in making sure that we don't get to that 10% or higher, and we can keep it to our 5% or lower. So that's where we're really different with some of the states that we're seeing really taking some big leaps backward.
And just one more question on masks. It's true that people outdoors in any way, shape, or form are not required to wear a mask under the governor's order. Suggested to wear a mask if you can't maintain 6 feet distance, but not required to wear a mask.
Correct.
Yes.
Recommended, but not required.
Yeah, that's a point of real confusion out there too. I don't know.
So I just got back from Manzanita and people walking on the sidewalk were wearing masks. And if they couldn't keep a distance, and people put them on if you walk by them. So Ken.
Yeah, Nancy, I was interested once again in how many ICU beds are currently available. Do we have that number?
Yes, I do. If you give me just a second here.
It seems to me that that's probably the biggest flag that we have in terms of as a state, at least where we are on this. Again, reiterating that not overwhelming in the hospital system was the primary objective of all of these precautions.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, I know that Commissioner Fisher just mentioned California, and I've been reading about what they're doing there as well.
Yeah.
So let me get it here for you real quick.
I think in Texas, in 2 of the major cities, they hit 100% of their ICU beds in Houston and Dallas, I believe.
Yeah.
So they're having some problems there.
So we have, in the statewide, we have 168 available. And that has been pretty steady over the last 2 or 3 weeks around the 160 to 170 mark.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Paul?
Yeah, I know last week we had interpretation question, or maybe on this whole indoor, outdoor, and wearing mask. And my comment then, and it still is today, is that if you go into any public place today, all the employees are wearing face coverings. And the public is expected to wear face coverings when they go indoors to any public place. And so my comment was in the context, last week was in the context of our buildings and the public coming in. And I think there was maybe confusion or not clear understanding, or maybe some disagreement around if you can be 6 feet apart, you don't need to. And of course, I sent you all emails and copies of the governor's comments that were published in the media. A website talk about the indoor requirement, and maybe we are in better clarification today. Maybe we have a better understanding of what the requirements are. But my question maybe to the administrator is that if the public is going into stores and restaurants and other public places and they're seeing everyone wearing masks, and now the signage in all these buildings saying a mask is required, and they go into the county building and they see an employee that is, let's say 6 to 10, 12 feet away from anyone not wearing a mask, that is, I think, maybe going to create a public perception problem if that's the case. So is there any update on this, Gary, as far as what our policy is? I know that, it's not necessarily comfortable and for some, from a health standpoint, not easy to breathe with a tight face covering, in which some people alternatively are using shields instead. So is there any updates on what our policy or what it's going to look like at the county?
So Commissioner, we are following state law. We just heard that from our attorney and from our Director of Disaster Management. If a member of the public is in our county buildings, they are seeing employees wear masks because they're less than 6 feet apart. If an employee is at their desk by themselves, they don't have to wear a mask if they're more than 6 feet apart. I assume that's the same for businesses because we don't see that as members of the public. We don't see behind the scenes of what a business may operate. I respectfully understand your concerns, commissioners, but I'm following the advice of our attorney and our Director of Disaster Management, who've consulted with the state, and I believe we're following appropriate guidelines for how to wear masks.
Right, and my concern is not to is to make sure, number one, we're meeting the minimum requirements. But frankly, I think to some degree, I think as leaders that we ought to be exceeding the minimum requirements, or at least seen as. I think it's more important that we actually do versus being seen, because one's political, one's actually real. So with that, citing what's going on in the rest of the country in areas where they're seeing exponential growth, you know, I'm, you know, relatively hopeful that Oregon can still maintain its track record and not seeing that exponential growth. Obviously, we're all very concerned about that. We don't want to be in that state. We don't want to see businesses have to close down that recently opened. Right now, the numbers don't indicate that we're on that trend or path. You know, I'm glad to see that all of us did a little PSA on face coverings, endorsing that. That's great. You just want to put it out there that, you know, I think that's gradual increase of people circulating about and following the rules and so forth, that we don't see spikes, and that we gradually increase our public activity and business activity in a way that everyone can slowly get back to a norm of some sort, a new norm. I'll just end there with, you know, we got to be cautious and at the same time recognize the value of our economic situation and really the jeopardy that we all may be in economically, but that's actually a national problem at this point.
So anybody walking in the building would see people wearing masks. Now, if they went down the hallway, they might not if there's somebody at somebody's desk, but people aren't in the back hallways. I mean, and also people are signing in when they come in. So, and I saw somebody a little frustrated about that yesterday in DSB, but they did. And my understanding, we've only had a few people that wouldn't sign, so they turned around and left. But anyway, I think we are demonstrating a consistent message to people coming to the county. Sonia.
So Nancy, I just want to make sure I got this. In the other states that are moving backwards, they're at a 10% infection rate.
In many of them, yes. So when you look at Florida,
So is that a pretty good benchmark for us if we get together next week? Now we're at 5.3%. If we go up to 7%, then we could say, oh, we're headed towards moving backwards. And then
I mean, I can't answer that because I'm not the governor.
right.
But it would be a really bad, it would be very concerning if we continue to see that uprise and we go to 7% next week, for example. That's extremely concerning.
Do we know how quickly the other states rose? Like how long it took them to get to 10%?
I do not know that.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so thank you. Wait, I better not say thank you because you're probably gonna say Nancy we can stay here.
No, I'm done too. So I think unless you have any other questions, Nancy, thank you very much. You can go.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, what's next?
Next, if we can bring in Greg Geist, please. We have an update for you, Commissioners. Water Environment Services and Oregon City ballot measure. You've already been briefed on this, but this is a further update and next steps for what will happen with this. So I'll ask Greg, as soon as he's on here, to please go ahead.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. As you may recall, we need to put a second pipeline from our Tri-City facility out to the Willamette River. And in order to do that, we need to go beneath an Oregon City park, John Storm Park in this case. Our current outfall runs underneath Clackamas Park, just downstream of where we're planning the second outfall. And so due to Oregon City's charter, any work on, around, under, through a park needs to be approved by the voters. So we needed to get something on the ballot for November 3rd. We got direction from the commissioners to seek Oregon City's support for that, which we did on June 17th, and we got a unanimous vote of the Oregon City Commission to put that on the ballot for November 3rd. So just wanted to close the loop with you folks today to say that that's happening. We also have an extensive, public outreach effort launched. We can only do so much as far as once this ballot is established, then it's just a factual kind of presentation. We've met with the Grand Ronde Tribe, with the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We've identified over 100 individuals and groups that we are going to be reaching out to over the course of the summer. We also have online forums, walking tours, social media, online open houses scheduled in advance of the November 3rd vote. So we're trying to get information out to folks so that they can make a decision. We're also going to be working with the West Advisory Committee and talking about this in July, making sure that they're informed. So anyway, just wanted to close the loop. Thank you for allowing us to do that. We're lucky that we got, fortunate that we got Oregon City's full support on that as far as their commission. And, in addition to the work that we're going to be doing factually, we would welcome the board's support through the summer.
All right. Thank you for the update. I don't see any questions. I'm sure you have our support. So thank you.
Anything we can do to help.
Yep. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg.
Gary.
Next, please bring in Sue Hildick and Kimberly. I think they're in one, they're all together, they're together. So commissioners, this is an introduction of the county's new public information officer for you. So I'll let Sue, as soon as she's in here. Oh, look at that, okay.
Hey everybody, nice to see you. Kimberly and I are here with Nancy at the EOC. Hopefully you can hear us. I'm really delighted to introduce you to your new PIO, and Kimberly's been on the job for 6 weeks, coming to us after 15 years at ODOT as a public information officer there. So she knows Clackamas County. She's worked on some of our projects, and she's an incredible addition to the team. We want you to meet her because you're going to start hearing directly from her as she handles the media. She already did some great media last week. And I don't know, Christina, if you're able to show that screenshot of the COIN interview anytime, that'd be great. But in the meantime, let's let Kimberly say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some of you again. I've worked with some of you for over the past few years, and I'm happy to meet many of you for the first time. I'm excited to be here at Clackamas County. Some of my favorite projects that I worked on at ODOT have been in the county. And I've, over the years, have built great relationships with a lot of the community members, community leaders up on Mount Hood, as well as in Boring, and built relationships with a lot of the local elected leaders in many of the cities, and presented at many commissions and board meetings throughout the county, and sometimes in front of you guys. So I'm happy to be here. My family, my grandpa was born and raised in Malino, so this was just a really good fit for me. And it's really strange starting a new job in the middle of a pandemic. So that's something forever. So I really look forward to meeting each of you very soon, and learning how I could serve you and serve your constituents and help you meet your goals.
Kimberly's the first employee I've ever hired over Zoom. It went really well at work,
Yes.
which was awesome. So I want you to remember we've reconfigured the PIO position a little bit. So it's also, it's PIO and policy liaison. And that is to help PGA work on your MFR priorities, your top policy priorities, those that cross-cut departments. So she's going to be helping us do that too.
My only concern is that she said it was good to see some of us.
Yeah, because
Oh.
Yeah, I just want to just say that when I heard that Kimberly was hired, I didn't know about it prior, but that when Kimberly was hired, I was pretty excited. She did great work at ODOT, and her experience with seeing the bottom of the bus often, she'll be a great addition to Clackamas County.
Awesome. Thank you.
you.
All right. Oh, there we are.
There she
Oh,
is.
there it was.
Just doing the work for us last week.
Yes.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I was gonna
All right.
say, you have to thank Brenda. She was the one that actually shared it.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Great, thank you. All right, next, commissioners, holding your public meetings in person again. So you've asked staff to do some research for you on how long that would take to set up your hearing room, to have both a live meeting and a Zoom meeting. There is a technological update that needs to occur in the hearing room that actually is already underway. It will take approximately 1 month to get it completed. Probably 3 more weeks. It's already a week into it. Technology services and PGA are already doing that. Until that is finished, you could meet in person in the hearing room. We, of course, would make sure you're socially distanced as far as spacing. So you would not sit at the dais. You would sit on the floor on the tables we set up for you in March when you held your last in-person meeting. We would remove most of the chairs from the hearing room so that we'd have limited members of the public in the room. Until the technology is updated, the glitch is that there can be only one conversation at a time, which means we would have to literally have a stage manager or a floor manager to say who talks, when, and there could be no overlapping conversations. Otherwise, the Zoom connection would be lost. So it's awkward, but we could do it. And that is only until the technology is updated, which will be in approximately 3 weeks.
We'll wait.
So the question is, do you want to wait for the technology to be done, which would be around August 1st, in which case you then could meet in person and we could have a Zoom connection. So if any commissioners did not want to come in person, you could still be on Zoom, as well as the public on Zoom, as well as people live in the room. So the answer is we need till at least August 1st to get the technology in place. However, you could do it now. It would just be technologically awkward, and why we do the kind of pacing here. So seeking your direction on when you'd like to come back in person, and we do need some notice so we can prepare staff.
All right, Paul?
So if I heard you right, Gary, this technological little glitch about two people speaking at the same time will be resolved once we get past this August date, right?
Right.
So that said, that's one thing I heard. And secondly, can you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what that kind of looks like? So let's just say that 2 commissioners are remote on Zoom and 3 commissioners are live in the room. How will there be any audience in the room at all?
No.
There could be, yes.
Okay, so for their experience, let's just say that there's a small area for people to come in and testify, or they're watching the meeting, whatever it may be. Are they still going to look at the screens to actually see the commissioner that is not there, who's participating by Zoom? And will that alternate from one commissioner to another? Or even let's say that someone testifies publicly, but on Zoom, will that experience be able to be visual in order to catch everything, or is it just one screenshot at a time?
Right, great question. I don't I don't know the answer to that, other than anyone on Zoom would be on your screens in the hearing room. You would not be bringing your laptops in the hearing room if you were physically present. You would be there physically present, but on your screens and the TVs, you'd see who's on Zoom, and that's how you would see it, commissioners. How we broadcast it, honestly, I don't know. I think it'd probably be a split screen of the live room and then who's on Zoom, but I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to find that out for you.
So we don't need to have, or we cannot have either a laptop or a iPad like we typically had before?
Not in the room for Zoom. No, you cannot be on Zoom yourself. If you're physically in the room, you will be watching it on the screen and hearing it.
You can still have an iPad and check things like Martha would do. Just
Staff report,
Zoom.
yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
August 1st.
we'll wait
Okay.
for you.
Okay. Well, after August 1st, I'll keep you posted, but it would be early August.
I don't know why we have to sit on the floor, though.
Well,
You said we're gonna sit on the floor.
your tables would be on the floor.
Oh,
I knew you were going to say that, Jim.
Okay, so we'll keep you posted. So we'll aim for early August, and then you can decide when you'd like to come forward. It looks like Commissioner Fisher had a question.
Yeah, so Gary, I'm just curious, so everyone in the hearing room, including commissioners and staff and any members of the public, would continue to wear masks?
Sure.
If we're less than 6 feet apart, yes, we would all wear masks in that room, and you would just take it off when you speak. Otherwise, you'd wear the mask. Yes.
it's one person up at the dais at a time.
But you qualified that, Gary, with if you're less than 6 feet apart.
Right, if we're more than 6 feet apart, we don't technically have to wear a mask, but back to what you mentioned earlier, Commissioner Savas, this would be a perception issue if the
You have
public
to
was
wear
there.
it.
We'd
I
be
think
wearing a mask the entire time you're in your meeting. You'd literally lower it to speak and put it back on.
I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
At least for a while.
Mhm.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we'll keep you posted, but for now, we'll continue your meetings as is through the month of July. We'll aim for early August, but please let me update you as we go in case there are any changes, but that will be the target. Okay, next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, July 9th, 2020. You have a public hearing on a transfer of a road from, let's see, transfer jurisdiction from Clackamas County to the city of Milwaukee for a portion of Monroe Street, a board discussion item, 2 of them on establishing Juneteenth as a county holiday, an approval of a memorandum of understanding and a letter of commitment for the Get Moving Transportation measure. And then you have quite a lengthy consent agenda item list. There were some additions made to your agenda yesterday, and there's going to be a few more made today that you'll see an updated meeting agenda. There appears to be no controversial items on your consent agenda, in my opinion. But if you do have any questions, if you'd please let me know prior to Thursday, and we will answer them for you. All right, those are my updates. All that's remaining is Commissioner communications.
Who'd like to start? All right, Martha, you're up.
I'm up. Well, I have no real new news at this point, so I'm just at home doing all my reading and walking my dogs outside. That's about most of it, and trying to stay caught up on emails and basically phone calls. So
Thank you, Martha. Ken?
About the same position that Martha's in, particularly for this last week.
Yep.
Was good to spend some time with family, and did ask people to rededicate themselves to the preamble of the Constitution, and remember that what this holiday is actually, or what this holiday was actually all about. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so, Paul?
Yeah, not much to report other than a lot of transportation discussions going on. And I guess we'll talk about that Thursday, right, Gary, as far as what that one opportunity on the measure. Just so for those of you who aren't aware, apparently the Portland Business Alliance is coming out in opposition to the measure. And I'm assuming that a lot of the business community chambers and business alliances are gonna, a number of them are gonna join in that effort. I think it is precarious timing to put so many things on the ballot, especially this November 3rd, and knowing that our economy is fragile at best, but we definitely in a precarious time economically. And I'm really wondering about the timing, let alone some of the aspects of the measure itself. So look forward to that conversation on Thursday.
All right, Sonia.
Yeah, a couple things. On the Health and Human Services Subcommittee of the Association of Oregon Counties, we are planning our retreat and working in conjunction with AOC. And one of the big topics of discussion of what we're trying to grapple with are investments in human services and what that looks like and what kind of lens we need to have as far as delivery of public services. So there'll be more to come on that, but AOC also, and Martha probably could speak better to this since she's on the executive committee, but Gina has also been on a parallel course about what this means for the AOC organization. And so I just want to give you guys a heads up and more information to follow on that. I also participated with our stakeholder group for the Metro Supportive Housing Services measure to get them up to speed on unique issues in Clackamas County and the process so they could be well grounded in entering their first stakeholder meeting, which happened yesterday actually. And I listened to the meeting. It was really great. They are working on building their ground rules and their values and how they're moving forward. They have a tremendous lift this summer to make recommendations, of course, to us. And I have to say, our staff has done such an incredible job in picking such a wonderfully diverse group of folks. We've got home builders, we've got human services providers, and we've got Clackamas Service Center represented, Clackamas Women's Services, Francisco from the youth homeless services providers, Dave Nielsen, home builders. We have really awesome folks representing on that group right now from Clackamas County. And Jill Smith, I'm so pleased to say, will be at every meeting. She is technical support to that effort. And we will, it was interesting. I just have to say, there was a lot of talking around one of the key issues. Marissa, who's the Chief Operating Officer, I'm not sure what her exact title is of Metro, but she was really expressing the tension that exists. And they didn't really address the sort of the elephant in the room of that. And I am completely fine talking about the elephant in the room because I spent so much time calling voters on this measure that people often just don't trust Metro, that there is a huge heavy lift for accountability, making sure we're getting people on the street, making sure that we can measure this because we have to show to the public that we're doing this. And that's going to be a real challenge. And we as the governing body for Clackamas County, we really need to make sure that we have the accountability measures that give us the flexibility. It's so important that we have the flexibility to meet the unique needs of our community. So that is what our local stakeholders are tasked to do. And I'm going to just try as much as I can to just be a fly on the wall. Of course, we can't participate, but it's a public meeting, so I can absolutely listen. And I'll keep you all posted. And then lastly, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I know people probably want to get on, but Martha, I am reading Stamped from the Beginning, and it's really, truly one of those books that it's hard for me to put this book down because it is such an interesting frame based on the history of racist thought, which goes all the way back from Aristotle really framed it way back then, and it's really all about policy and power first, then justifying racism to preserve policy and power. So if anybody else is interested in reading this book, Martha, how far along are you in it now?
I'm just about through the first 2 chapters.
Okay, so what I would love, Martha, if we could just, you and I, if anybody else wants to read it, Gary, I think we should just maybe notice a public, if we have to, if there's more than 2 commissioners, just to talk about it. But if it's just Martha and I reading it, Martha, if we could just spend some time, we can just set a time to talk about it. It is excellent. And my husband is reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is the second book from this author, who's a professor at American University. But it's timely that these were written right when they're written.
He's actually at Brown now. He
Okay.
was an American, but he moved to Brown because he is actually heading their whole department that now is dealing with. He's probably the foremost authority on racism in the country at this point. And I suggested to join, I'd like to suggest it to all of us, I would like to invite him out here. And that might be something that we involve our legislators with and our governor and all of us to actually have a seminar with him would be wonderful. I don't know how we pay for it. I don't know if he would just be willing to come out, but I think it would be well worth pulling together some kind of educational seminar with this, with this particular book, this particular professor, and we'll take it from there. So I don't know, Gary, if he'd pay his own plane fare, I'm sure we can get somebody to put him up.
We'll ask our new officer, our county equity and inclusion officer, to look into that.
Yeah, and if anybody, Martha, are you good with joining me with just scheduling a little chat about the book as we get through it?
Sure.
And if anybody else wants to join us,
we can have it as a book group.
So, you guys, this is not a discussion.
Sorry.
This is a update, commissioner update, and I see everyone wants to comment on everything, but let's try to comments. What?
We're kind of all isolated, Jim. We're just losing it. What can I say? Okay.
Yeah. So, Paul, you want to say something?
Yeah, there's something that Sonia said about Metro that kind of triggered something I did want to say that I forgot to say, so I apologize. And that is that, I know that we've had, different experiences on Zoom with attendance, and some of it's been pretty good, and some of it has been really not so good. I think there's different venues, and I'm not sure what's wrong, but there are some of the community efforts that are been underway pre-COVID, where public involvement is actually required and is actually incredibly important. And the attendance has not been very good at all. So there was an open house I think it was last week, last Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was not very well attended at all. And I've got concerns about public processes, and when Commissioner Fisher mentioned Metro or trust issues, not that it's their fault that there's not a lot of attendance, but to me, we ought to be re-examining either how we advertise these meetings to get attendance, but as important as some of these processes are, with that little attendance, we ought to be hit the pause button and say, how do we get that, what I would say, some minimum or adequate participation with the public, but when not very many people, few, show up for an open house, that's not a good day. And it literally is, you can count them on one hand and you'll have fingers left over. It's just not very good. I did want to just say one other thing that I should have mentioned is that Thursday night was C4, and there was discussion around housing, and I think we need to have a conversation, frankly, about HB 2001. I know we're going to, but after talking to our staff yesterday about some of those comments and from some of the cities, that old standing issue of goal 10 and city participation or lack thereof as far as providing or accommodating the housing in the cities is right up there again. I just have concerns that the cities, despite HB 2001, are not going to be as anxious to accommodate that. And when I hear them being all for doing that in the unincorporated area along McLaughlin Boulevard, it gives me pause because that's got a higher density than the cities have, and it's their responsibility, not the unincorporated areas. And we got to remember that as we put in more housing, we are growing the bedroom community disparity. We are the bedroom county of the region, and if we're going to balance that out, which we need to, even for our own financial sake, we've got to have some more business employee opportunities in Clackamas County and not overgrow the housing and essentially displace businesses. And I think that's something that's a red flag that we need to be discussing. That's my comment. I just want to say that that's a conversation we need to have in the future, and that's my update from C4. Thank you.
I hope that C4 did also agree on a letter on 205, because boy, it looks like it's going to be the top of the list since the Rose Quarter issue is pretty much dead for a while. So we ought to be on that quickly. Yes. Other than that, I see the parking lot's still blocked. Thank goodness I'm not parked there. I'm gonna run out, get some lunch. I think that I want to thank Nancy for the hard work she's doing. Boy, she's gonna need a vacation. And and Dr. President, all the volunteers who have been working over there, great job. Very proud of the work they're doing. I would say that the food box thing is going well. It's somewhat diminishing a little bit on a few cases. We could use more volunteers now that's moved up here. Of course, it was the 4th of July. We'll have to look, see who volunteers, but it's a great program. County should be proud for being part of it. So with that, we'll see you at 1:30, right, Gary? All right, it's not this. All right, thank you. See you 1:30.